Got it.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm not going to run through what we already had in the challenge statement, but just to give a bit more context to what it is about. What you're looking at here on the right side are just a set of different building codes that an architectural designer or an architect has to go through to even start designing any building in Singapore. And what you notice actually, there's a lot more PDFs than this. There's also the URA website and there's also the SCDF website, which um, actually add a lot more complexity to this. But the point is that when designing any kind of building, there's a lot of manual research burden where we have to go through all of these PDFs to figure out what's the relevant code that actually applies to building, how to apply it, even interpret all these codes. And there's also a lot of knowledge gaps because you may not know that a certain PDF out there that you require actually exists because there's just so many of them. So that makes the whole process of designing to compliance, a really, really inefficient process. Um, so just to give you an example, this is what we call an occupant load factor table from SCDF. And how you apply this is you find the program that is relevant to that room in your building and you apply that factor that they give you. And the problem is there's just so many of these rooms here that it takes you a while to go through if you're not very familiar with it. And when you have a few hundred different programs in the building, then this becomes a headache, right? You have to sieve through the whole list just one by one, figuring out which one applies to you and is relevant. So that makes it really, really inefficient. How we think it could be improved is a little like what URA Space has really provided here. You click on the site that they provide and it just gives you the relevant information that you need for your project instead of you going through your PDFs, going through all the code and figuring out which one applies to you, which one doesn't apply. Just click on it and then it gives you the relevant information that you require. Of course, I mean, this is only for URA. URA has done a pretty good job here, but again, this is not everything that applies to your building. It's just a really small subset. Are we thinking, could it cover every single building code eventually that might apply to the project, and that's would likely save um, all your consultants a lot of time. Just to give examples, this is Upcodes. They are from the American market and they actually have that capability in their platform already. So what you could do is just say, okay, I'm building a new building, what type it is. I have a sprinkler system, what kind of occupancy it is, and it gives you the relevant code information that is applicable to your project without you having to go through all those PDFs. So they already have this in place for in America. And after speaking to them, they're actually not expanding to the Southeast Asian market. So there's your market here. They're not competing in this market at the moment. In 2018, they also have gone a little step further and they've actually built a Revit plugin that directly checked your models for compliance. Um, it's hard coded entirely, so every time you change the code, it has to be updated. But it is possible, and there's actually papers that have been coming out in the past year or so that actually investigated the feasibility of this. So everything that you see here, this filtering of the code, providing the relevant code sections, and even analyzing your building, your project for those code compliances is all possible. It's just nobody has built it yet. Nobody has gone through all of this code to actually make that possible yet. And we hope that this is a capability that can be developed, by someone out there. Yeah. That's about all, a very short and sweet thing. So just open up the floor to questions.
Thank you, Anders. To the audience, if you've got questions, please type into the chat box. Whilst we're waiting, maybe Anders, let me maybe pose a question. What do you think is the most significant challenge in actually getting this solution out?
Um, Most significant challenge actually is dealing with all of these code documents because you see here, most of them are in PDFs. They're all in formatted differently. Some of them are in websites. So actually extracting all the information would be actually a really big challenge.
Okay.
But otherwise, the next one will actually be um, trying to deal with conflicts in the code. Because sometimes the CDF might say something and then you notice that, another um another piece of regulation conflicts it. And then yeah, whether you want to deal with that or not, or maybe just leave it as it is. I think that's something to explore.
Okay. So is this more of a one-off exercise, and is there going to be a challenge with continual updates?
Likely there will be because every time the authorities put out a new piece of code, it's going to be a new PDF. It's going to be a new website, or
Okay.
maybe in the case of SCDF, actually, in the last year they changed their entire website. So if you wrote a scraper for that website, you kind of have to rewrite your scraper. So that will be a continued challenge until we have a common format for all the building code.
Okay. All right.
I think Jason had a more of a
Yeah.
comment. In fact, the biggest challenge will be on the SSCP standards later applies to the real detailing of the design process. Um, yeah, so actually this is more of a copyright issue. Say the agency or the board, no, the authority in charge of Singapore standards does not allow for any copying of that. So it's more of a thing to work out with them than something that we can help with.
Okay.